They said there was nothing there. No evidence. No names worth knowing. But this morning, one social post shattered that illusion. Because buried inside those sealed Epstein files is a secret powerful enough to shake the foundations of government. And the people who promised transparency are now the ones hiding it. For years, we were told that the truth was coming, that justice would finally be equal, that every name, no matter how rich, how famous, how connected, would be revealed. And yet, the very people who once shouted for disclosure are suddenly whispering for silence. Pam Bondi says there's nothing left to find. Her allies nod along. But one digital trace, one morning confession, says otherwise. And if you think this is just another political scandal, stay with me, because this story is about power, secrecy, and the lengths people will go to bury both.
Over the department's refusal to allow members of Congress to observe the conditions of DHS detention facilities. In fact, there is a specific statute that authorizes both Republicans and Democrats to conduct oversight over facilities that house or detain immigrants. But no, the department refuses. So we're here in the Homeland Security Committee, and I'm sure the Republican majority does not like it when this administration undermines its own authority, its own statutory authority, to conduct oversight. But no, instead of all of that, we are here talking yet again about Joe Biden. Newsflash, Joe Biden is not the president. He hasn't been the president for 7 months. So if we are going to conduct oversight here, why are we doing it about the Biden administration when this administration is literally detaining lawful permanent residents and even some U.S. citizens? And it gets worse. It's not just those masked ICE agents. There are many FBI agents who are being called away from their duties to investigate terrorism, violent gangs, child trafficking, and other crimes in order to help ICE arrest and detain immigrants with legal asylum claims, nonviolent. That makes our homeland less safe, not more safe. So we should hear from FBI Director Kash Patel about how many of his criminal investigators are being taken away from their criminal investigatory jobs, keeping Americans safe in order to help round up non-criminal immigrants trying to immigrate the right way. Some of these detainees are being held in Bureau of Prisons detention centers that are unfit for convicted criminals to stay in. We should hear from Pam Bondi about how much of the department's resources are being used to detain these nonviolent, non-criminal immigration detainees. And while they're here, we can ask them about a very pressing question. What's going on with the Epstein files? Donald Trump promised to release them. Pam Bondi said she had the files on her desk and that she was going to release them in the name of transparency. Kash Patel has spent years railing against the FBI to release the files. Many of my Republican colleagues were banging on the table to release the Epstein files. But now, all of a sudden, after a months-long review, Bondi and Patel say nothing to see here, no evidence that any American would want to see about accomplices, co-conspirators, or other people involved. Yesterday, the Republicans voted against releasing the files. So what's changed? Well, we all know Donald Trump has had a relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. He flew on his plane, he hung out in parties, spoke highly of him. And now there are many people saying that Donald Trump is included in the Epstein files. In fact, there are reporters who say that there are videos of him with topless women. Elon Musk even confirmed that Trump is blocking the release of these files because he's in them. Pam Bondi says there's nothing there, but Donald Trump even acknowledges that there is evidence there. It's just not credible. It's made up. This is a Truth Social post from 9:43 this morning. It is an admission that Donald Trump is in the Epstein files, and the American people deserve to
Gentleman,
know
time has
whether he is or
expired.
not.
Mr.
Mr.
Garbarino is
Chairman, I would,
recognized for 5
pursuant to
minutes for
Clause
question.
2K6 of Rule
Gentleman is
11,
not recognized. Your time has
I have a
expired. Mr.
motion, Mr.
Garbarino
Chairman.
is recognized for.
Because behind closed doors, subpoenas are flying, files are missing, and the same officials who once demanded answers are now pretending not to hear the questions. But this time, one congressman refused to play along. Representative Dan Goldman didn't show up to play politics. He came with documents, legal authority, and the kind of questions that make powerful people sweat. In a committee hearing meant to discuss border security, he tore through the script. His target wasn't a rival party. It was a system of silence. He began by pointing out what no one else dared to say out loud, that the administration's agencies were breaking oversight laws. By statute, members of Congress have the right to inspect detention facilities. Yet Homeland Security refused. They closed their doors to both Republicans and Democrats, keeping lawmakers and the public in the dark about what was really happening inside. Goldman didn't stop there. He linked that defiance to something even bigger, a pattern of obstruction that stretched from immigration detention centers all the way to the sealed Epstein files. The same people stonewalling oversight of one are hiding the evidence of the other. And when he said it, the entire room froze. Instead of transparency, Goldman saw distraction. While federal agents were detaining lawful residents and asylum seekers in unfit conditions, the committee's majority kept focusing on a president who wasn't even in office anymore. He called it what it was, a smokescreen, a way to change the subject, to make sure the public looks one way while something darker happens behind the scenes. Because when attention shifts to meaningless investigations, the real abuses stay hidden. The congressman laid out the facts: nonviolent immigrants taken from courthouses while pursuing legal cases, thrown into overcrowded facilities, some unfit even for convicted criminals. And when Congress tried to see for themselves, the Department of Homeland Security said no. Goldman's voice didn't shake. He said, "This isn't oversight. This is obstruction." Then he turned the conversation where no one expected it to go. He asked the question that brought the room to silence. What happened to the Epstein files? You could feel the air leave the room. Cameras panned. Chairs stopped shifting. Because everyone in that room knew exactly what he was referring to. The promise that these files would be released, the names exposed, the truth revealed. Months ago, the former president pledged transparency. Pam Bondi claimed the files were on her desk, ready for public release. Even his hand-picked FBI director swore that nothing would be hidden. But after a months-long review, their verdict was simple: nothing to see here. Goldman leaned forward. He reminded them that this wasn't a tabloid story. This was about federal accountability. The files in question weren't gossip, they were evidence. Evidence of who enabled, who protected, and who looked away. And then, he went further. He pointed out that only weeks ago, the majority had voted against releasing those same files. After years of demanding disclosure, they suddenly changed course. So what changed? That's when it happened. A post appeared online early that morning. It didn't come from a whistleblower or a reporter. It came from the very person who once promised to make everything public. In that post, he didn't deny being mentioned in the files. He called the evidence made up, not credible. But think about that. Why dismiss something that supposedly doesn't exist? Why call it fake unless it's real? Reporters picked up on it immediately. Some had already claimed the files contained footage and records implicating multiple high-profile figures. Even a certain billionaire entrepreneur hinted that the files were being blocked from release because of who might appear in them. And suddenly, everything made sense. The silence, the reversals, the months-long review. What looked like a legal process was starting to look more like a burial. Goldman connected the dots out loud. He said it was no coincidence that the same people detaining the powerless were protecting the powerful. The same offices ignoring congressional oversight were the ones sitting on evidence of abuse. And the same administration claiming to defend law and order was breaking it to shield its own. Inside that committee room, his words cut through the noise. Because it wasn't just about files. It was about fairness. The same government that can detain a nonviolent immigrant for missing a court date refuses to detain the elite when credible accusations surface. Bondi's silence became symbolic. Her promise of transparency had turned into avoidance. The more she insisted there was nothing there, the more people wondered what she was trying to protect. And as Goldman pressed her for answers, her composure faltered. She deflected, redirected, even tried to change the topic. But every time she did, he brought it back to one unshakable truth: Americans have a right to know. For years, the story of the Epstein files has been about what we're not allowed to see. Judges sealed evidence. Agencies redacted names. Promised reports disappeared. And every time someone got close, another barrier appeared. An investigation closed. A record misplaced. A statement quietly walked back. The former president once called himself a champion of transparency. But when it came to this, the walls went up. The allies who once demanded exposure became defenders of secrecy. And yet, the public isn't forgetting. Because every inconsistency, every denial, every nothing to see here has the opposite effect. It draws more attention, not less. Goldman knew that. That's why he didn't let the moment pass. He knew that if he didn't say it in that room, it might never be said at all. He looked directly at Bondi and said, "If you truly believe there's nothing to hide, then release it. Prove it." No response, just silence. And that silence said everything. Because this wasn't about one person. It was about a culture of concealment that protects those with power and punishes those without it. When oversight is selective, justice becomes a weapon. When laws are applied unevenly, truth becomes optional. The irony? The same government justifying detaining nonviolent immigrants in overcrowded facilities claims it can't release a list of names because it's too sensitive. The same people who preached accountability now refuse to be accountable. Goldman's final words turned the hearing into something else entirely. Not a debate, but a declaration. He said, "We won't let you hide. We won't let you bury the truth. And we sure as hell won't let you weaponize law enforcement against the vulnerable while protecting the powerful." And when he finished, there was nothing left to say. The room went quiet again, not the silence of victory, but of exposure. What happens next will decide more than the fate of one case. It will decide whether transparency is a privilege or a promise. Because if those files stay sealed, it won't just be a scandal, it will be a message. A message that power still protects itself, that truth still depends on who it threatens. Pam Bondi once said the files were on her desk. Maybe they still are. Maybe they're somewhere no one can reach. But every time another official says, "There's nothing there," more people start to ask the same question. If there's truly nothing to hide, why keep hiding it? That's where this story leaves us. With a choice. Do we look away like they want us to? Or do we demand what every citizen deserves? Transparency, accountability, and truth, no matter who it exposes? Because justice doesn't happen in silence. It happens when people refuse to stop asking questions. If you believe the truth shouldn't depend on politics, if you believe no one should be untouchable, then do one simple thing. Share this video, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel. Because the only thing more dangerous than a buried secret is a public that stops digging. And we're not stopping anytime soon.